Welcome to this first May work period episode of Leader Time by FedNet, a podcast for Senate observers with floor remarks from Majority Leader John Thune and Democratic Leader Chuck Schumer. Both leaders spoke in the first hour the Senate was back on Monday the 11th. Thune attacked Democrats for their stance on immigration enforcement a day before a budget reconciliation bill began to move in committee. The following material is protected by copyright.
Mr. President, we have a lot to do over the next 2 weeks. Confirm Kevin Warsh to the Federal Reserve, approve a nominations package, and fund law enforcement at the Department of Homeland Security. That last item, Mr. President, should not need to be on our agenda. We should have been able to fund border security and immigration enforcement officers as part of the final Homeland Security funding agreement. But my Democrat colleagues refused. In fact, the Democrat leader said today that Democrats will fight legislation to fund law enforcement at DHS with, quote, every tool we have, end quote. Mr. President, it's difficult to believe that we're here again. We all remember the defund the police movement embraced by the left and members of the Democrat Party. We also remember how cities who moved to defund the police backtracked in pretty short order. Because it turns out, Mr. President, as even some leftists came to realize, we need police officers. We need law enforcement. We live in a fallen world, and there are always going to be people out there who seek to hurt and exploit the innocent. And we need men and women who will stand between the innocent and danger. We need men and women who courageously dedicate their lives to law enforcement. And all of this should go without saying, Mr. President. I can scarcely think of anything more obvious. But apparently the need for law enforcement is not obvious to my Democrat colleagues, because they're right back to a defund the police position. This time it's defunding law enforcement at the Department of Homeland Security, specifically Border Patrol and Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The men and women who patrol our borders and take dangerous, criminal, illegal immigrants off of our streets. And, Mr. President, when I say defunding law enforcement at DHS, I don't mean reducing the budget. I mean complete and total defunding. My Democrat colleagues refuse to provide a single dollar for the men and women who protect our borders. They refuse to provide a single dollar for the men and women who take dangerous, criminal, illegal aliens off of our streets. And I want you to think about that for just a minute, Mr. President. My Democrat colleagues apparently believe that there should be no physical presence at our borders and no law enforcement officers to deport dangerous criminals who have entered our country illegally. Mr. President, we had 4 years of chaos at the southern border under President Biden. But at least we had the Border Patrol, overstretched as it was. Now Democrats apparently believe in removing all law enforcement officers from our nation's borders. Mr. President, I shouldn't need to state the obvious here that we need border security and immigration enforcement officers to protect our nation, just as we need police officers and FBI agents and Secret Service agents and all of the law enforcement officers who serve our communities. Democrats might like to pretend otherwise, but there are dangerous individuals who would like to make their way illegally across our border. Drug traffickers, human traffickers, other criminals, terrorists. And the men and women of the Border Patrol and Immigration and Customs Enforcement are the men and women who stand between us and these dangerous individuals, who turn them back at our borders and take them out of our communities if they do manage to make their way into our country. These are the men and women that my Democrat colleagues want to defund. Not reform, Mr. President. Nope. My Democrat colleagues repeatedly rejected reforms. They want to defund, and defund completely. Zero agents at our border. Zero agents to deport criminals here in the U.S. illegally. That's what my Democrat colleagues opted for. It's Police Week this week, Mr. President. A week to honor our nation's law enforcement officers and remember those who made the ultimate sacrifice while protecting our communities. Perhaps it will remind my Democrat colleagues of just how much we rely on law enforcement and just how much we need all of our nation's law enforcement officers. Mr. President, I now move to proceed to calendar number 296, SRS 526.
The clerk will report.
Calendar number 296, SRS 572, resolution withholding the pay of senators if a government shutdown occurs.
Mr. President, I send a cloture motion to the desk.
Clerk will report.
Cloture motion. We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, do hereby move to bring to a close debate on the motion to proceed to calendar number 296, SRS 526, a resolution withholding the pay of senators if a government shutdown occurs, signed by 17 senators as follows.
President, I ask consent the reading of the names be waived.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
For his part, Schumer addressed the reconciliation bill, hantavirus and CDC cuts, gas prices, and the Iran conflict.
So, Mr. President, if you want to understand Republicans' priorities right now, just look at the $72 billion reconciliation bill they revealed last week. The Republican bill would pump tens of billions of dollars into ICE and Border Patrol without any guardrails to prevent these rogue agencies from continuing to unleash violence on American streets. But that's not all. To add insult to injury, the Republican bill charges American taxpayers $1 billion to build Trump's gilded ballroom, while including $0 to help Americans with rising costs. Their billion-dollar bill has $0 to help Americans deal with groceries and their prices going up, gas prices going up, $0 to bring down Americans' health care, housing, and electricity bills. At a time when Republicans are at a time when Americans are struggling to put food on the table, Republicans say, let them eat cake, and demand American taxpayers build Trump a palace while they're at it. Keep in mind, Donald Trump said just a few months ago that, quote, not one penny is being used from the federal government for the ballroom. Not one penny, said Trump. Well, give me a break. He's put $1 billion in the budget for it. This staggering waste of taxpayer dollars has nothing to do with security and everything to do with Trump's ego. How long before Trump asked for his name to be emblazoned in gold on the side of the ballroom? The American people are calling out for help. But these ballroom Republicans have a constituency of one, Donald Trump's ego. That is a disgrace. Democrats will use every tool in our arsenal to fight this bill. We will bring changes. We will bring challenges under the Byrd rule. We will offer floor amendments. We will force Republicans to take vote after vote showing that instead of helping working families, Republicans are forcing Americans to pay for Trump's billionaire ballroom. Americans don't want this ballroom blitz. They want Congress to bring down costs. On the hantavirus, earlier today, 17 Americans, including 3 New Yorkers, who were on the cruise ship at the center of the hantavirus outbreak, arrived in Nebraska, where they remain in quarantine. One has since tested positive for hantavirus. They should know that all of us here in the Senate are thinking of them, praying for their health. No one should have to go through such an ordeal. The hantavirus outbreak reminds us of what happened during COVID-19. We need to invest in public health and pandemic preparedness. Sadly, the Trump administration has not learned that lesson. The Trump administration gutted our public health defenses. The public may not know it, but Trump fired the workers whose job it is to protect us from outbreaks like Hanta. Donald Trump, Russell Vought, and Elon Musk are purged hundreds of federal workers at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the Department of Health and Human Services, including, here's who Trump fired, cruise ship inspectors, port health station staff, disease detectives, and others. He cut all those. And now we have the hantavirus. They were there for a purpose. Blindly swinging their Doge chainsaw through the federal government, Trump, Vought, and Musk also hamstrung the CDC's vessel sanitation program, a program that didn't cost the taxpayers any money. The cruise ships paid for it. But of course, they didn't care. The solution is a simple one. I've put out a plan that calls on the Trump administration to rehire these fired outbreak response experts, to restore funding to protect Americans from infectious diseases, and to rejoin the World Health Organization and other groups that track outbreaks and provide early warning. Rehire, restore, rejoin. That's how we keep the American people healthy and safe. Diseases like hantavirus and COVID don't care what your politics are. They threaten everyone. Donald Trump needs to stop politicizing public health and start investing in it. On Iran, Donald Trump and members of his administration have referred to the fighting in Iran as a, quote, skirmish, quote, a mini-war, quote, a little excursion, quote, a blip, and most recently, quote, a love tap. Let's call the ongoing hostilities with Iran for what they are, a war. Let me repeat. Donald Trump dragged America into a war, an illegal, costly war, without any goals, without any end game. It's been over a week since we hit the 60-day threshold under the War Powers Act, which means the hostilities must cease unless Trump gets authorization from Congress. Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth tried to skirt the deadline when they told us the timer had stopped because the fighting was over. Tell that to the American service members who were dodging Iranian drones and missiles in the Strait of Hormuz last week. Tell that to the American people who just saw headlines the other day about Trump saying we're getting ready for a protracted blockade. The war's over? Bunk, poppycock, craziness to even say it. But Trump says anything that enters his head which he thinks will please him at the moment, even if he gets himself in trouble by the end of the day. And to this war, there's still no end in sight. Just today, the most recent round of negotiations with Iran fell apart. Trump keeps digging himself into a deeper and deeper hole. Meanwhile, Americans are now paying over $4.50 for a gallon of gas. Families need real relief at the pump, and Senate Democrats will support real action to lower costs. But let's not pretend 18 cents of gas tax relief per gallon makes up for the damage Trump created with this war. 18 cents isn't $1.50, which is how much the price of gas has gone up since this war started. Trump wants credit for handing the American people a glass of water to put out the fire he started, the massive fire he started when he launched this war. Americans don't need just a few cents back. They need an end to the chaos that sent gas prices soaring in the first place. The best way to lower costs is to end this illegal war. Trump could end this war tomorrow and prices would plummet by far more than 18 cents a gallon. And Republicans know that this blunder didn't magically end when the 60-day clock ran out. It's time to do something about it. So Democrats are forcing a seventh vote on our War Powers resolution this week to withdraw U.S. troops from hostilities with Iran. If Republicans care about preserving our war powers, keeping our service members safe, lowering Americans' costs, they need to support the War Powers resolution and end this war. If Republicans vote against our resolution, they will continue to bear the blame for Trump's war. Not a skirmish, not a blip, not an excursion, it's a war.
Thanks for listening. This program is copyrighted by Federal Network, Incorporated, and provided only for informational and educational purposes. Unauthorized reproduction, distribution, or use of this episode without express written permission from FedNet is prohibited.